Hey guys, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. And I am so excited to be reading the last two chapters of Katie and Her Camera. This is so exciting. I really think this book has been fantastic, and I hope you guys have liked it as much as I have. I mean, this book really had a lot of fun twists and turns, and it was very saucy for the 1950s, which is much fun to read all of that and see what would have been in something from that time period. So that's exciting. I will be continuing this reading series. I think all of you guys have been enjoying it immensely. And so I will be checking out a few other books. I just got one from Nicole at Nesting Haven and one from Michelle at Comfy Cozy Living. So I think one of those two books will be just perfect for the next book. Now, we will start that book in the first of the year. So I'll get through December and then we'll start that book. And I will be doing a few Christmas books in December. So those will be short stories that we can read in just one episode of Story Time with Katie. So that's going to be really fun. Hi, Trisha. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I see Mr. Stash just popped in to hit the thumbs up. Well, Mr. Stash, thank you for hitting the thumbs up. I do appreciate that. That's wonderful. That really does help with the YouTube algorithms. So that's exciting. Now, there's a couple of things happening after my live today, so I want to highlight those for all of you guys that are wondering what's happening. Tim at Over the Years is going to be having a live identification at 6 o'clock. So people have submitted photos and he'll help you identify them. So that's at 6 o'clock. And then also at 8 o'clock, the Antique Nomad is having his premiere. And of course, Tim and Over the Years is having his sale at 8 as well. So there's two things happening at 8. And then also at 9 o'clock, Lucid Curios will be having her own live sale. So there's a lot of things happening this afternoon through the evening in the vintage community that I did want to highlight. My backdrop is a little funky right now, as you can see, because it's that time of day where the sun sets and just pours in my window. So I've got all this funky lighting. So guys, I'm sorry about that, but it is what it is. Hi, Cheryl. Thanks so much for joining this evening. I'm glad you could make it. So we are in the last two chapters of Katie and Her Camera. This is a 1953 romance novel by Lois Holbert, and I just think this is so fun. It is a romance novel for young moderns, and this has just been a fun book. I've really enjoyed it, and I know all of you guys have enjoyed stepping back in time a little bit to the 50s. So this is fun. Now, the last two chapters today are 16 and 17. That's the end of this book. So we only have just a few more pages left to go. And I'm very excited about what happens. I did practice a little bit in advance for this reading, and so I do know what happens. But this, I have not read ahead in this book. I have been keeping up exactly each week, like you guys have been keeping up. So I never knew how this book was going to end. So this is really exciting. I think you're going to love this. So we'll start the reading. I do want to make sure that we're done in time for Tim at Over the Years. I don't want to run over into his live. So we will get started with the book. And of course, if you guys are watching this on replay, wonderful. You can still do that and catch it later. And there'll be a lot of fun things to learn about in this chapter. So join me as I read chapter 16 and 17 of Katie and Her Camera. Chapter 16, A New Leaf for Katie. Paul's feature on narcotics, clipped with Ralph's photographs, lay in Katie's desk drawer in Milford. Whenever she came upon it, it upset her, but she couldn't throw it away. It was like a hair shirt, as if she wore during a performance. Always it brought back the agonizing ride with Diana and the humiliation of her talks with Paul, underneath which lurked the suspicion that she had done herself and Paul a terrible injustice by her inflexibility. She worked hard, pitched in to help the typesetters proofread until her eyes ached, and once was talking more and more of running the paper, while Mr. Bailey was restricting himself to editorials and obituaries. 2 or 3 times Barb tactfully reclined her instigation to play up the photographs too much in the paper. Don't cheapen them, she urged. Don't make it look too easy to appear in the paper, or they'll lose some of the satisfaction of it. It will seem less distinctive. School was back in full session, and Katie was covered all kinds of school events, from football to play rehearsals, lectures, and band concerts. She acted as an informal aide to the science teacher and advising the school journalists, and found herself lunching and having dinner with him and others almost daily. "Ted's such a nice fellow," she remarked to Barb one day, "so gentle and easygoing, restful." "Yes," Barb said, "but why don't you give Bernard a break?" "What kind of a break?" Katie said, puzzled. "Didn't you know he's dying to have a date with you?" "You're crazy," Katie said in disbelief. "He isn't interested in anything but keeping cows and horses healthy." "He's interested. I don't even think that he likes human beings." Barb was right. Word had gotten around that Katie's friend no longer came visiting on weekends. And 2 days later, Barb met her at the post office, walked down the street with her, and stared at her fiercely, and invited her to go to a movie with him. It was more like a dare than an invitation. Katie could imagine him hypnotizing all animals in his care. And one evening, Katie acquired a condensed education in veterinary practice and conceived a vast respect for Bernard's directness and his matching word and deed. He said he wanted to kiss her, and forthwith did so with such vigor and efficiency that Katie, who had considered herself well able to parry such advances or laugh her way out of them, felt butterflies in her stomach all the way home, and hastily slipped out of the car before he could unfold again. "A real Heathcliff," Katie said to Barb the next day, showing the black and blue spots on her arms and wrists. "For the first time in my life, I actually felt scared. No more of that, thanks." But Bernard looked so miserable at her refusal when he asked her for another date that she gave in and went dancing with him next Saturday. This time he was a painful gentle with her, as if he were more barging forth a colt. She decided, but now the intensity of his gaze alone was enough to make her nervous. Then the banker's son came home on leave from the Navy and began taking Katie to parties in Rochester and Winona. It was very casual and light, and he talked to her a great deal about his fiancée in New York. But soon he began to announce at her dates with Bernard and Ted. He was very annoyed. Then he talked about her coming to New York for a visit over the holidays, and the fiancé dropped out of the conversation altogether. At one of the parties in Winona, she ran into Paul's friends, Martha and Jack. Eager to hear the news of Paul, she was off in the corner with Martha, trying to explain what had happened when her escort came and whisked her off. She sulked the rest of the evening. She stopped going out much. "Popularity with men is much overrated," she reported gloomily to Barb in one of the sessions over morning coffee. "It only creates problems and tensions without satisfying anyone. You can't relax and have a good time. Everyone knows too much about your last date, where you were, what time you came home, and what you did and whom you saw, and it feels cheated if you don't spend as much time with him. And you get worn out explaining that you don't feel like getting all wrought up over anyone. Then you feel guilty for disappointing each one." "I know who I'd concentrate on if I were you," Barb remarked. "Bernard? That's just it. I don't want to concentrate on anyone at the moment. Well, back to the article on weather predictions. I like a one-man deal much better," she concluded, fishing out a dime for her coffee. "In that case, why did you split up with Paul?" Barb's question kept recurring to Katie as she worked on the article. At dinner with Ted that evening, she listened absent-mindedly to him until it occurred to her that she was never absent-minded with Paul, and then she paid him strict attention. When she reached her room, she lay down on the bed without turning on any lights and watched the moon creep up in the sky, rising smaller and smaller and dimmer, and then behind a wisp of clouds, just as it had on her first real date with Paul. What was he doing now in Chicago? Could he be watching the moon and thinking about that night? What a void he had left. The proof was that she never saw a man without comparing him with Paul. This one was the same height. That man had his twinkle and the lines cleaving in his lean cheeks. Another spoke of the same deep laughter in his voice, always shades of Paul, but none of them had such a mobility of expression, such a swift tumbling of ideas and images. There was no substitution, and no one found so totally satisfying. It was only now that she had come to realize how much her life had begun to revolve around Paul. She had missed him so pleasantly, his letters reassuring her in her absence, that she had underrated the need of him. And besides, her work had fallen into a groove. She saw abruptly how routine it had become, how she fitted everything into a preconceived pattern instead of letting it form spontaneously into a story. That was no good. She lost the stimulus of the individual case. She had stopped sending photographs to magazines, and she lacked her drive entirely and felt very stale. This has got to stop, she told herself. It was time to take inventory, time to acknowledge her mistake and see what could be rescued from the experience. She had been feeling very sorry for herself long enough. The first thing to do was clear the record and apologize to Paul. Katie shoved aside the typewriter. This was something that must come in the warmth and intimacy of handwriting. Paul, dearest, this is the only way to clear away the emotional cobwebs from my life at this point, and that is to tell you how deeply I regret my behavior to you when I last talked to you. I see how lacking I was in trust and understanding, and how appalling I must have seemed to you in my indignation and rigidity. Please forgive me. I can see, too, how such inflexibility has reflected in other areas since then, how easily it spreads and contaminates. Even my work has grown more routine, more sterile. So I'm trying to infuse that also with more spirit and understanding. Whether I see you or not again, I think you must know how very much you have meant to me, how much you have influenced me in every way, and I shall be very grateful for that. Let me wish you happiness with all my heart in whatever form it can take. With love, Katie. Then there were other cobwebs to clear away with Diana. Katie wrote her an apology and said she hoped that their friendship would be renewed. She added congratulations on working with Paul and Ralph and tracking down the narcotics ring. She leaned back, feeling happier than she had in many weeks. Even if she never sent the letters, she wasn't sure yet that she would feel any stronger, more herself, as she had perhaps grown a cubit in character. Next, she dragged out boxes of photographs she had taken during the summer and fall and began studying them to see what possibilities there might be of sending them out to some publications. One thing that struck her now was that she had acquired a fairly representative pictorial account of small town life and community affairs. The country auction story looked quite good. If she spiced up the captions a little bit, it might be suitable for the magazine. By bedtime, she had selected and written captions for 4 picture stories. It remained only her to find envelopes and send them off tomorrow. When she mailed them the next morning, together with the letters to Paul and Diana, she found a package from Ralph. It was his new book. She looked through it on the spot, thrilled to find familiar pages in print. Then she opened the accompanying note. Katie, dear, number 1 copy for you, of course. If it weren't for you, the book would have never reached the publishers. Reviews so far are excellent. Judging by your letters, I gather you keep busy and are making a lot of new friends. You don't say much about your work anymore. I hope you're not losing interest in it. Are you happy? Paul drops a line from time to time and seems busy too. He found an apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, not too far from his office. In his letter for the first time, he asked about you and whether I'd heard much from you. Said he had a roundabout report of you from friends in Winona. Also mentioned there was a possibility that he might be back in Minneapolis during the holidays. My hunch is that you're the magnet. Your mother has invited me over for Christmas Eve, so I'll see you shortly. Kenny is dying to show you a batch of photographs he made with your old box camera. Watch out, because I think he's going to up you as a photographer. Affectionately, Ralph. What happened to you? Barb asked when Katie came into the office. From the looks of it, you must have finished all your Christmas shopping or stumbled over a treasure chest or something equally sensational. Katie showed her Ralph's book, but Barb kept a shrewd, unconventional eye on her. You look like a new woman, and a book didn't do that. You haven't by any chance received a letter from Paul, have you? Katie shook her head. No, I've just decided that I better come to terms with myself, and I'm starting off by pitching in on photography again. If I want to be any kind of person, I have to work at it in all directions. Well, I'm turning over a new leaf myself. I've decided to go to college after all. Barb, that's wonderful. What made you decide? Well, Dad says I have a good head for it, the family newspaper business, that is. We've both been watching your adjustment here, and Dad has really been amazed. He says it usually takes months for a cub reporter to take hold and really become useful, and you were learning the ropes in a matter of weeks. When you came, you were green as could be, and I could run circles around you and techniques with my experience. But what convinced me was how quickly you caught on, how you managed to find something fresh, or to say new material, and buried old stuff, how you see the possibilities that I missed and relationships that, frankly, I never understood. Well, I learned a lot from a veteran newspaper man, don't forget, Katie pointed out. Yes, I know, but the very first days you were here, you saw a story in hobbies I'd known about for years and in people that had been around all the time. You have a way of making things come together in a pattern before, and I don't see any connection, but you do. After it looks so simple. If it was there all the time, and I just didn't see it. Anyhow, you sold me on the college deal, and I'm going to university next year. Hey, let's celebrate. Let's go out and have a cup of coffee. Over coffee, they decided there was little doing in the office, so they might as well do Christmas shopping. Katie wanted to get something for Ralph and pick up last-minute things, so they took the bus into Rochester and looked around. Katie picked out some records of medieval music, and on the way out of the store stopped to admire a tiny chess set of ivory. Its charms was too much for her. She had to buy it. On the way home on the bus, she pulled it out and admired it again. That's what Paul and I should have done last summer, she thought wistfully, setting the pieces in place. We never did get around to playing chess together. Who's that for? Barb wanted to know. I don't know, Katie said. Myself, I guess I just couldn't pass it by. Maybe it will bring me good luck. The next few days, she brought no mail from Chicago. Katie sighed every morning and reminded herself that she hadn't really expected an answer to any of her notes. There were parties before Christmas, and then it was time to bundle her presents and leave for home. Okay, guys, that was the end of chapter 16. We will be heading into 17 now, and we'll be finishing up this book. I definitely think this was a good chapter. Katie finally wrote those notes to Paul. My hope is she gets back together with Paul because they really are a perfect couple and they deserve to be together. I think Paul's just a great guy. All those other men seem like they didn't suit Katie very well. And that one guy that gave her bruises, he needs to go somewhere. So we'll see what happens. So good that the newspaper man's daughter is going to college. That's wonderful. And then it seems like the newspaper there is really taking off. So lots of good things happening in this chapter. I see Pamela came in. Hi, Debbie. How are you? Pamela's here and Side Street Market. I'm so glad you're enjoying listening. Oh, thank you, Debbie, so much. I appreciate that. Happy Thanksgiving, Jeannie, and everyone listening. Yes, of course. And how is your medieval record collection coming? I thought it was only me. Trisha, that's funny. Yes, in this book, they mention a lot about opera music and medieval music and various records that I'm not familiar with. But in the book, that's something that Katie really likes and Mr. Esperon likes as well. His mother, I think, did opera. And so they were really into that. And I just can't imagine starting a collection of that. But it is fun to read about a book where there are records. So I do really enjoy that. So Trisha's here, Pamela's here, Christine from Side Street Market, Jeannie, and other great people. Oh, hi, Teresa. Thanks so much for popping in tonight. And I see Beth is here from Carolina Sweet Treats and Pretties, and Maria. Hi, Maria. How are you doing? Lots of great people in the chat tonight. I'm sorry if I missed you while I was reading, but thanks for joining in. This is a fun chapter. We're going to finish the book up. Lots of really good developments in this chapter, so I can't wait. And then we will have some fun with Christmas books come December. So here it is, chapter 17, right now. Perfect for Christmas. The train was full of holiday celebrants. Many of the passengers were already festive with song and drink. Katie listened to the singing with a kind of affectionate indulgence that soon rested her head against the window of a train in a daydream, watching the snow whirl past and glimpsing occasional lights from a farm or a village. In the last week, her mood of self-examination and depression over parting from Paul had lifted. She still missed him sorely, but had made peace with herself and was feeling a gradual return of the stimulus to work. There she knew what the swiftest way to heal herself. Seeing other men had helped her little, except that it had quickened her awareness of herself as a person and her own attractions. It gave her a more solid basis for self-evaluation. So much had happened in the year since she had stood on the balcony at Dayton's, brimming over with her new idea for a picture story. The end of her campus life, which she had once been so reluctant to leave, the beginning of her vocational life, and above all, Paul. He put the tentativeness romances of high school and college into a shade of a daydream world that showed her the reality of compassionate love, so that no matter what happened next, she would have a sounder basis for an eventual happy marriage. Katie thrust aside speculations about whether Paul might return for the holidays and concentrated on plans for the next year. She would ask Ralph if she felt she had learned enough on this job to venture applying for work on a city newspaper somewhere in the next year. Mr. Bailey, in a heart-to-heart talk to her after Barb's decision to go to college, had told her frankly that he had no expectations that she would stay indefinitely in Milford. You would grow restless here when it came to you. I know you, he had predicted, and I can see you're approaching the stage where an operation like ours would no longer satisfy you. That would be bad for your own development and for my paper. You'd start taking things for granted, and that is fatal. As it is, you've given us new perspective. Every person brings a little different ability and flavor to this work, and yours happen to be just right for us. But don't mistake me, he added. You can never learn too much about the newspaper business. It's just that you have passed through this particular stage much faster than the average cub reporter fresh out of college. Besides, training new reporters keeps me on my toes. So, anytime you feel the urge to move on, let me know and I'll see what you can do elsewhere. She had scoffed at the idea that she would tire of the work so soon, but lately she had realized that it didn't challenge her as it used to, and although she had made many friends in the community, she wasn't bound to it as the Baileys were. You had to have roots in one place and feel the depths of obligation and interest that Mr. Bailey felt, and Barb too. The paper was an institution to them and to the community, and it made such a difference. The conductor called out, Minneapolis, Minneapolis, next. Katie reached into her purse for lipstick. Her fingers closed on the little chess set she had bought in Rochester. She opened it, charmed again with its miniature delicacy. Maybe she could send it to Paul. No, she shook her head. That would be trying to drag him back. The letter was one thing, clearing up the record, but she refused to beg. She pocketed the chess set, put on her lipstick, gathered up her package, and stood in line in the aisle. Ralph was at the station to meet her. Well, for a lovelorn maiden, you look right pert. So, it wasn't so serious after all? Just an infatuation? Or have you found another man already? She laughed and then answered soberly. No, it wasn't any infatuation. I know now I was really in love with Paul, and I'm not kidding myself that I don't miss him. It's going to take me some time to get over it, but there's no use sitting around and moping about it either. And I certainly haven't found another man. Paul would be an easy man for another to replace. It really wouldn't happen." Ralph gave her one of his piercing looks. "Did you ever tell your mother the whole story? I think she's been rather hurt that you never confided in her about it." "I know," said Katy. "It's only now that I feel like I can actually talk about it with anyone. And I will tell her what happened this time." He changed the subject. "They're waiting for you to come trim the tree. Kenny and I set it up early this afternoon, mainly because your mother wanted to keep me out of the kitchen. Kenny can't wait to show you his photographs. He's going to give you a run for your money as a photographer of the family, that boy, and we'll open presents tonight instead of on Christmas Day." There was an excitement of homecoming, of catching up on news, a telephone calls from friends, and a visit from Stan and Louise while they were trimming the tree. Kenny brought out all the presents and set them up under the tree. "Gee, Mom, can't we open them before dinner?" he pleaded. "Oh, come on, be a sport for once." Mrs. Owens was firm. "We've already pushed the time ahead to Christmas Eve, and you can just wait until dinner's over. Besides, Mike is coming over after dinner, too." So it was late before the present opening began under the supervision of Kenny. Ralph was unwrapping his records when the doorbell rang. "Katy, see who it is, dear," Mrs. Owens said, picking up the paper and ribbon and stuffing it into a large carton she had rounded up for the purpose. "Probably Mike," said Katy, and she disappeared into the hall. "Merry Christmas!" she cried as she opened up the door. Then she stood wide-eyed and white-faced in the doorway. "Paul!" Paul came in, shaking the snow from his hat and trench coat. "Do you mind a surprise visit, Katy?" She was voiceless for a moment more, and he said huskily, "No emissary for me this time. It's wonderful to see you, Katy." Paul, I wanted so much to see you again and didn't even dare to think about it." "Katy, we have to talk alone. Can you get your coat and come for a walk?" "In this storm?" But she was already opening the hall closet and throwing on her coat, pulling on boots overhead with a scarf wrapped around her neck. Outside, they trudged toward the Arctic light on the corner, with its circle of light half-oriented in the falling snow. They had to lift their feet carefully over snowdrifts as they crossed the street. "I had intended to fly in and meet you at the station," Paul said. "I suppose I had some idea that would erase the mistakes of your last visit home, and we could start afresh. But I was afraid to take the chance flying in this weather and came home by train instead." How that train was so crowded, and it crawled at the snail's pace. "But it wasn't just your not meeting me," said Katy in distress. "I can understand about deadlines. It's only that I was so unprepared for you sending Diana of all people, and it was such a shock to learn that you've been able to see her regularly, and I didn't even know any of the story behind it." "I know, and I'm dreadfully sorry that I thought never occurred to me. I suppose because so often during the summer I had nearly told you what we were working on that I forgot you didn't know. In fact, you remember the night we were celebrating your story. You were puzzled by my silence. And by the way, you looked at me once as if I were someone you just met and really didn't care much about. That was when we were really getting going on the narcotic story, and I must have had a hunch how easily I could get interested in you. I was sitting there thinking how hard it must be to risk your neck on a story if you had a wife and a family. Not that I enjoyed it, but I was twice as careful during the summer when I began seeing more of you." He stopped and kissed her wet face. "You're shivering." "Yes, but it's more from the shock of seeing you than from the cold. Katy, we must never let this happen again. I've missed you so much all these weeks that I felt as if I were living in a vacuum. I should have never gone to Chicago without seeing you first. If we had talked it over, it could have happened." We were both tired and had built up such great expectations about your homecoming that we had no resistance against this kind of crisis. I was never so happy in my life when I saw your handwriting on that letter. I felt like running up Michigan Boulevard to broadcast it to the world. I'd already decided to come here at Christmas time to see you, and I was torn between writing to tell you so or just coming and surprising. Paul, I tried so hard not to count on seeing you over vacation, but I found this in Rochester and I just couldn't resist it. She tugged the little box out of her pocket and gave it to him. I told myself it was a present for myself, but in my heart, I really knew better. Let's swap packages. Paul took her hand and pulled off the glove, stuffing it under his arm. I didn't bring you a diamond, but this is an opal ring from my mother, and she used to wear it. I really want you to have it. They both laughed when the ring spun loosely on her finger, flashing its glints of emerald and turquoise and ruby against the light of the street lamp. Oh, Paul, it's beautiful, she said softly, admiring it. I'd much rather have this than a diamond. I still can't believe. Oh, Paul. Katie put her hand in horror to her mouth. Mother must be wondering what's happening to me. I walked out without a word to anyone. We better telephone home. That's all right, Paul said with a laugh. Ralph was in on the secret, and he must have told her by now. But of course, if you'd like to call her, we sure can. No, let's go back and tell her in person. But Katie's voice trailing off into the white misting world of snow. Behind the firmness of her words, she tucked her arm through Paul's, as if to cling to their solitude. Paul squeezed her fingers on her arm, sensing her wish to prolong this intimacy. When you're Catherine Sarah, we won't have to number these moments together. Catherine, Catherine, he said softly, and the name sounded strange to her ears, as if he were conferring a title of maturity and grace and love. Well, guys, that is it for this book. Oh my gosh, they're engaged. How exciting is that? Oh, I knew they'd get back together. I just knew it. And Kenny's eagerness to open presents and get excited about things just really makes my heart happy. He's a fun background character. I really like him. And of course, Ralph was in on that secret. I knew that would happen. And I think Ralph and Katie's mother are together because, obviously he's been helping her and she invited him for Christmas. So I think all of it worked out really, really well. Lots of great things happening. Hi, Teofane. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate that. And Debbie said, Martha, I subscribe to your channel. Oh, wonderful. Martha is here, Vintage Conversation. Thank you so much, Debbie, for subscribing to her, and Martha for subscribing to Debbie. Debbie and Martha both have a great channel, Vintage Conversation and Our Vagabond Travel. So if you're watching and you're not subscribed, please go subscribe to them. And Melody says, yay, I know. I'm so glad they got together. Aw, is what Trish is saying. I agree. Really, really wonderful. Opals are beautiful. They really are. What a lovely ring choice. I like that so much. Love wins. Yes, it does. At the end of the book, they get together and it's a happy, happy day. I love how they're walking off in the snow. Oh, that's just so cute. Hi, Christine. I think I already said hello to you, but yes, that was so, so sweet. I'm glad I caught the end. Would always have wondered what happened to the lucky couple. Yes, me too, Gretchen. I was eagerly awaiting to see what happened to them both. Oh, Nancy, great. Thank you so much for subscribing. And if you're not subscribed to Nancy at this overstuffed house, please go subscribe. She's going to be having her first live sale this coming Thursday after Patrick's sale, the Trusty Huckster Mercantile. And we're all really excited about that. So if you're looking for something to do on Thanksgiving Day and you're home alone or you just want to escape a little bit of the Thanksgiving craziness, then come over and watch Nancy. It's going to be a lot of fun, and she's got a great channel. And opals are the October gemstone. I have a few of those. How lovely, Nancy. That's wonderful. Hi, Victoria H. Thanks so much for joining this evening. So what did you guys think about this book? Overall, did you like it as much as I did? Because I thought that it was really wonderful. And I've been thinking a lot recently about Katie's character, and I think Katie's character is really interesting because for the 50s, women didn't often go to work, let alone have a college degree. A lot of them were home working as moms. That was their full-time job, or housewives. So it's really interesting to me that Katie, it's a good thing that Katie's out in the world and Paul's so supportive of her job and her career. I just think that's so wonderful. So that's really neat. I guess that's why they do say that it's a romance novel for young moderns, because that idea is very modern of the time. Yes, I liked it. Good, Trisha. Great read. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Victoria. Beth is Carolina Sweet Treats and Pretties. Oh, you're asking when Beth's sale is. Yes, Beth is prepping for her live sale, and Beth's first sale is tomorrow after Misty's sale here on YouTube. So you got to stay tuned for that and check in. It's Beth's first solo sale. So that's going to be really wonderful, and I'm excited about that. I liked it. Kind of a nice escape. Good. Yes, it is. It's a fun little world to get into because I felt totally immersed in Katie's life and the small town living, and that was just so delightful. I so enjoyed doing that. Absolutely, Beth. I'm happy to do that anytime. So yes, Beth's sale will be tomorrow after Misty's sale. Things are a little bit different this week as far as the calendar goes. Michelle at Comfy Cozy Living will be taking Misty's spot on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Not permanently, but just for this week. Misty will be on Tuesday. I think she's having a little bit of a shorter sale. And then Thursday, Patrick, the trusty huckster mercantile, will be doing a short live sale at 8 o'clock Thanksgiving evening, followed by Nancy at This Overstuffed House. And I probably will be going live at some point or another during that day just to say hello to you and check in. And then for the rest of the evening tonight, it is, 5:36 at 6 o'clock. Tim at Over the Years will be having a live identification. So if you're looking for just a fun little video and you want to learn more about vintage, there's a great identification segment that he'll be doing at 6 o'clock. Then, of course, at 8 o'clock, he will be having a live sale. And also the Antique Nomad will be having a live premiere. So we all need our education from Uncle George. So that will be fun to watch. And then at 9 o'clock, Lucid Curios will be having a sale. So lots of great things happening tonight on YouTube. Oh, thank you so much. I try my best to practice the book several times before I read it on camera so it's a little bit smoother. But some of the way that this book was written is they kind of go from Katie's inner thoughts to what's happening in real life to conversations with somebody else. And that does take some practice. So it's easy to get a little tripped up on words. Some of the words, there were a few words in this book that I've actually learned myself reading because I looked it up. It was a word that we don't really use anymore, but it was from the 50s. And then there was quite a few opera singers along the way learned about that I had never heard before reading this book. So actually I learned some things just by reading a romance novel, which was fun. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, we're going to have some fun Christmas stories. So I will be reading during Christmas. We'll be doing short stories every Monday. I will be reading Auntie Claus, which is one of the books that I read growing up that I think is just absolutely wonderful. We'll be reading The Santa Mouse. That will be fun. We'll be reading A Christmas Mouse, which is another great little story. And then we're going to finish off the reading by a really epic read. I can't say much more other than I am going to have some guest folks coming on my channel, and we will be reading live for you all the night before Christmas in our pajamas with eggnog and lots of fun. And it's going to be great. So tune in for that when that comes. Also, this coming Saturday, Vintage Vinny and I will be doing a live show on Coca-Cola trays. So if you want to learn more about collecting Coca-Cola trays, what to look for in authentic trays versus fake trays, we'll be talking all about that this Saturday. I don't know the time yet because originally we were going to do that during Vinny's time slot, but I do believe that Aaron at the Collection Vintage is having a sale at 6 o'clock. And we don't want to run into anybody, so we are going to readjust the time on that. But we will be doing that this Saturday at some point, and I will get back to you with the time. Santa Mouse is my favorite. Yes, it's so wonderful, Beth. It's a really fun story. And we used to actually hide things in the tree And then we try to find Santa Mouse, like we had our own version of Santa Mouse. And then Santa Mouse would leave us things. So growing up, we'd wake up and there would be little things hidden in the tree from Santa Mouse, which is fun. Thanks. Oh, you're so welcome, Debbie. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, we can chat for a little bit longer. I do want to make sure that we have time to get over to the different lives happening this evening. So I'll stay on just a few more minutes, and then I'll let you guys go and get on over to some other channels that are having some fun tonight. So yes, that's going to be really fun. You know, Victoria, apparently what YouTube has been doing recently is if you don't watch any of the content after you subscribe right away, they apparently will remove your subscription, which is really frustrating. So I guess YouTube's been trying to cut down on subbing. So basically you subscribe to someone and then they subscribe to you. I don't know why that's a bad thing. I don't think that it is, but YouTube has been cutting down on that. So that's been a big issue with YouTube recently, where they've been taking your subscription away, basically. So if you don't actually watch enough content, they remove your subscription, which is annoying. That's just awful. So I make sure to watch a couple of videos so that my subscription sticks when I do subscribe to somebody, because that does happen to me. Oh, thank you so much. I do love the red hat. It is very fun. This is not a vintage hat. This is a more modern hat, but I love fedoras, and the red color is really, really fun. Yes, I will be reading Anti-Claus. That will be coming soon. I probably will start that. Actually, next Monday, we'll read Anti-Claus. That will be the first book in the series. So I will be doing that. And who wants fruitcake to go along with Xmas? Well, Jeannie, not me. I am not a fruitcake eater. But for all of you guys that like fruitcake, that is just fine. You can have all the fruitcake. I'll gladly mail you my share. Debbie is saying, my Christmas haul videos comes out tonight. Please subscribe. Oh, Debbie, that's wonderful. Yes, thank you for reminding me, Debbie, about that. I can't believe I've forgotten. There's so many schedule changes and things happening. I'm trying to keep it all straight. But yes, actually tonight at 7 o'clock, all of the Christmas videos will be coming out for the Deck the Halls vintage Christmas collaboration. Debbie's is coming out, mine is coming out, and of course that is hosted by Carol at My Blessed Nest and Aaron at the Collection Vintage. So there's going to be some fantastic playlists to watch this week. Lots of fun Christmas content. I think there's probably over 20 YouTubers involved in that collaboration. It was an open collab, and it will be really fun to watch. So I'm excited to sit down and watch everybody's videos. That's going to be really great. Let's see what is in the chat here. Gretchen is saying, I watch, but I have to rotate my viewing. Yes, there is so much to watch. You just can't see it all. I try my very best, but it's impossible. Tia Fane, yes, there is. Tonight at 8 o'clock, George is having his premiere. And also, George told me today on Instagram that his premiere will be today and tomorrow. So normally George has a premiere on Monday and Wednesday at 8 o'clock. It's now going to be, just for this week because of Thanksgiving, it's going to be Monday and Tuesday at 8. So that's what's going to be happening with George. So yes, I will be on George's premiere later. I probably will be doing some live hopping because I try to support everybody, and Tim is having a sale at that time too. So I'll be back and forth or on 2 devices. You'll see me somewhere tonight. Nancy saying, because if you do not watch an episode now and then, it messes up the algorithm. It shows inactivity for the channel in spite of the high numbers. Oh, I see. It's about target ad dollars. Gotcha, Nancy. I understand, but still, that's really frustrating. If that fruitcake is doused in rum, yeah, even rum fruitcake, and I like bourbon balls and rum flavored things, but fruitcake is not my favorite. You love rum fruitcake. Well, that's awesome, Maria. See, there's something for everybody. My favorite thing is eggnog. I'm a huge eggnog drinker at Christmas. I'm a big fan of that. Hi, Nate. Nate's here. Nate, we all love your new name. You apparently have been quite the topic of conversation in all the chats with your new name, and we just think that's fantastic. So that is wonderful. I love Soul Nate. And Nancy saying, I watch too much some days and do not get any work done. My eBay and Etsy stores are practically empty. Well, I like to put things on the TV while I'm working. That I can do, and it's kind of fun to get things done while you've got something to listen to in the background, and that's great. Oh, good. I'm glad you popped on, Gina Marie. Thanks so much for. That's what Vinny always says. Thanks for popping on. So I think that's something that has sort of stuck with me, and I just have repeated it. But yes, thanks so much for joining. Ooh, fruitcake. Yeah, fruitcake is not for me. Nate, do you like fruitcake? Are you a fruitcake fan? Maria's saying she loves eggnog too. That's my fan. Oh, bad mistake. Did you mistype? You know, that happens to me all the time. And the autocorrect is awful. The autocorrect takes things and totally misconstrues what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it's not even at all close to what I was going for. I don't know. I think the autocorrect's a problem. I mean, sometimes it can be helpful, but I'm considering actually turning it off because it does not understand vintage words. For example, it doesn't know the word slag glass. It thinks it's a typo, so it keeps wanting to correct it. It just doesn't understand vintage language. We need an iPhone that has a whole system built to understand vintage conversations. That's what we all need in this community. So it knows Hager, it knows the word Copley, it knows all kinds of other great vintage terms. Your phrase is thanks for tuning in. Is that what I say, Melody? Thanks for tuning in? Well, that's good. That's a good phrase, I think. It does have to be the right kind of fruitcake. Yes, my mom loves fruitcake, and she always tells me that it does matter what kind because there is apparently, quote unquote, bad fruitcake. Nate, I've been thinking of your next channel name. Oh, all natural. Theophane. I like fruitcake. You do? Well, if you like fruitcake, again, more power to you. That would be too much sharing. Well, Nate, you gotta post a picture of your apron when you're cooking your dumplings and grilling out for Christmas. We all want to see what your chef's apron looks like. That could be your next channel picture. Gretchen saying it's pretty to look at. Yes, it is. Fruitcake is pretty to look at, but for me, it's not a favorite to eat. My grandfather used to make brandied cherries. They would pick them fresh from our tree and he would soak them for months in brandy. Christmas, each kid would have one before going home and slept well. I'm sure they did, Nancy. I love brandy cherries, and my dad well, they don't have any more, but when they lived in Blacksburg, Virginia, they had a big cherry tree, and we would pick cherries all the time, and we'd make all kinds of pies and things. And I remember that cherry pie one summer we made. It was so good. Yes, I would like to see your apron, Nate. We all know about the apron for Nate. Oh, Nate, you're hilarious. Nate, do you have I guess it's warming up there in New Zealand. So do you have your little hot water bottle with you to keep you all snuggly and warm while you watch YouTube? It's too cold here to do that. Nate. I'm always naked when I watch YouTube, doesn't everybody? Well, we're all cozy in our own houses, so you never know. And I like my little blanket and my dog, and I in my pajamas watching YouTube. That's the best. And no one sees me like that. They always see me with the hat and the brooch. Speaking of the brooch, people have been asking me to share my brooches. So I will talk about this brooch today. This is a gold-toned. It's a figural, not a figural brooch, but it doesn't really have a shape. It's just it has a shape, but it doesn't have it's not pictured after anything, if that makes sense. It's just a beautiful design. It's kind of like a swirl design, and it is made by Trifari, which is a brand that I think continued into the 90s, but this one I believe is from the 50s, and it is just really beautiful. So I will start talking more about my brooches when I appear on camera, because I know that's fascinating to a lot of you guys, and I would like to do a brooch video. I am working on getting my brooch collection together so I can show you guys on YouTube. It's nice and warm now. We are having a lovely spring. Oh, Nate, that's fascinating because it's getting cold here. So, totally opposite of us. But in Florida, it stays hot most of the year, but we have finally been getting some cooler weather, like in the 60s, and it has just been really delightful. My 17-year-old cat curls up next to me while I watch YouTube. Isn't that wonderful, Tia Fane? I love animals. And Nate, I'm sorry that you can't have a pet. I know you're allergic, but we send lots of hugs, virtual hugs from Louie to you. Uncle Nate, Louie loves you. Gretchen says, Teofane, I thought you meant Gina, nice. I learned how to spell brooches yesterday. I love your brooches. Glad to know more about them. Okay, Gina, that's great. Yes, it's such a weird word, and some people don't know if it's brooches or brooches. I've heard people pronounce it that way, and I think it is brooches. That's what I've decided, because that's what most of the vintage community says here. And then some people say pins. Now, I don't know that brooches and pins are the same thing, because I think of pins more as the stick pins, or the pins that just have that pin back, like you get on modern day pins without the safety clasp. So I don't know. I have to do some more research and officially learn all the terms. I would love to see a brooch video. Okay, Debbie, wonderful. Well, a lot of people have been asking for that, along with the swatch part 2. So I'll be working on that. Special brownies. Oh boy, is Laura Bemos in the house? Talking about that. So I do have some great content coming out this week. Of course, this Wednesday, I will be going live at 6:30. I have some sweet, sweet friend mail from Vintage Venny. I'm very excited about that. And from Melody. Melody, I got your package today. It is so wonderful, and I can't wait to share it on YouTube. So I'll be sharing that along with Vinny's friend mail, and then we'll be looking more at that Better Homes and Gardens magazine, and that will be my Wednesday live video. Now, I will be doing a Wednesday video in the morning featuring all of my vintage Thanksgiving. So if you want to learn more about the vintage die cuts and just genuinely see what I'm doing for Thanksgiving this year, I will have that video up for Wednesday at 10 a.m. So you guys can watch that and then catch me live on Wednesday evening. And then hopefully I'll be able to see you sometime on Thursday during the day. I just spelled it weird, so I always spelled it brooches. Oh, well, that makes sense too, Gina. It really does. No worries, Martha. I am about to head off because I want to make sure we all get to Tim's live, so I don't want to overstep on anyone else's event. I thought the name depended on the size. A brooch was large and a statement piece, while a pen was usually something small and maybe figural. Okay, Nancy, see, I'm learning from all of you guys here in the chat, because that's something that I didn't know. So I'm doing some research on that, and I really want to learn about the different pin back styles. So on the back, you have the safety clasp, and I do know that they actually use those much earlier than I originally thought. And then, so just because it has a safety clasp or not a safety clasp with just the stick does not mean that it's older necessarily. So I was reading some things on that, and it does get confusing on how to date brooches. So I'm learning a little bit more about that. I obviously know that sign brooches are better quality, and the sign brooches can help you date them as well based on the company. So I'll be looking into all of that. And I will be doing a video on Occupied Japan. I am not sparking any debates like we have in Jeffrey's chat, but I am wanting to do a little bit more education on Occupied Japan. And the piece that I am waiting for will be in hopefully next week. So the following week's video could be on Occupied Japan. I will be doing something on that. And I confirmed the dates last night with George. So if you are in the chat, George had a great midnight Calypso lounge where we could all hang out and listen to music and chat. That was really fun. And George had was in the chat talking with everybody, answering questions. And I enjoyed asking George about that. And he gave me a definitive answer. He said, this is what Occupied Japan is. These are the dates, and that must be so. So George would know. George is our resident expert on pretty much everything. So if George says it, it is. So that's what I'll be doing on a couple Wednesday videos from now, is some Occupied Japan things. I'm going to try and find some Miracle Whip just to see how awful it is. Oh no, Nate, don't subject yourself to that. I promise you won't like it. Debbie, I bet Katie shudders. Yes, I still have terrible dreams about the Miracle Whip. No, I'm just kidding. But that Miracle Whip was gross. Nate, I wish that you won't find any because it's just so nasty. I promise you won't like it. So would you say that I stopped at Miracle Whip yesterday at Publix and chuckled thinking of Katie's tasting the nastiness? Miracle Whip is so gross because it's a salad dressing. It's not even mayonnaise, and people use it as mayonnaise. And ugh, it's just disgusting. But did any middle-agers use it on kids' sandwiches? Probably everybody used it on sandwiches, because I know a lot of people still do. And our school even used it growing up. They had a big, big tub of it. It was huge, of Miracle Whip. Those late night music videos are very fun. They are, TFA. You were in the chat yesterday. It was a blast. I love those midnight pop-up music chats. I just think they're so fun. Okay, guys, I'm looking at the clock, and it is getting close to the top of the hour, and I don't want to overstep on anyone's videos or content coming out. So I'll give you all a few minutes to get over to some different content coming out tonight. Miracle Whip is like Nutella. You either like it or you hate it. That's true, because there are people that, believe it or not, hate Nutella, and I love Nutella. So we'll get over to Tim and over the years for his 6 o'clock live event, identifying antiques. So I will see you over there, and I will see you in some of the other chats this evening coming up. George's premiere is at 8, Tim's sale is at 8, and Lucid Curios's live sale is at 9 o'clock. So I will see you on one of those, and I hope you guys will stay safe, binge YouTube, and have a happy Thanksgiving week. Bye-bye now.